Welcome to the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions, now in its 25th season. Our panel features a longtime Penn State media and NitWits tag team, Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of Lions 24/7 with Fight on State. Between them, they've covered Penn State for more than 80 years. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ's Anderly Penwell, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we're a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Kogan Electric, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, the power of physical therapy. By Fullington Tours, offering round-trip transportation to and from Beaver Stadium from locations in State College and Altoona. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
Welcome to Nittany Nation Overtime.
Hello, and welcome to another week of Nittany Nation Overtime. We are the Nitwits, of course. I'm Anderly Penwell, joined as always by Mark Brennan and Neil Rudell. This week's special guest is Massimo Manca, a kicker from the 80s. Guys, how are we doing today?
Great.
Wonderful.
Great to have Massimo in here.
And it's great to not be talking about a loss this week.
After a win, exactly.
So yeah, Penn State, of course, winning in the whiteout 45-17. Bit of a rocky start on offense, but once we got into the swing of things, it ended up being a pretty solid performance across the board. What part of the offensive performance stuck out to you guys the most?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the play of Sean Clifford. I mean, after the way he performed in the previous two games, knowing that he was banged up against Michigan, at Michigan, for him to come out, have an early interception, and then pull things together the way he did, you know, I just think it spoke a lot about his character, not getting down on himself, his leadership. I think the overall team leadership. So Clifford, number one, and then number two, you know, they just were much more balanced on offense, and we started to see things we hadn't seen for weeks and weeks with the use of the tight end and the deep passes and spreading the ball around and getting the running backs going. So I think all those things ended up being, you know, positive for Penn State.
Yeah, and on the offensive theme, there's two things I'd like to single out. Both of them have been targets. One's the offensive line for several years, and it has improved this year. Played a great game the other day. I think that generally the pass protection has been pretty decent, was excellent yesterday. And I thought Mike Yurcich called it a really, really good game. Spread things, to, you know, a lot of different targets. The screen to Singleton was a good call in the right situation. They kind of corrected that from a week ago. And as Mark said, all the tight ends. Theo Johnson had a breakout game,
Yes.
you know. So, yeah, I thought he made good use of all his weapons.
And it definitely, first quarter for me at least, was very precarious. Maybe it was, oh God, is this going to carry over from last week? But then it turned around. Massimo, of course, kickers and the specialists are known for the mental game. When you have a poor first quarter like Clifford did, how do you mentally shut that off, leave Michigan as well as that dicey first quarter behind you?
Right. I mean, listen, I've always been a Clifford fan. I just like his composure. You know, we're going to get into it later about what happened early on, but he's just so calm and collected out there, and he came through, and he really, you know, his statistics were amazing on offense. He, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, right? I mean, that one bad throw, maybe he wishes he could take that back, but I like the way he responded, you know, all the criticism, and he just comes back and he has one of his best games.
And you touched on the criticism. He was booed early in this one during the run out as well. Same with Coach Franklin. What's your guys' reaction to that? How loud were those boos?
Well, I mean, it was clearly, excuse me, a mixed reaction, and I think it's unfortunate. It's a college athlete. Now, I know times have changed, and he's been there a long time, and you have other factors in play, but I just don't think that speaks well. And also, not only the introduction, but, there were, first 3 series that they didn't make first downs, and then he was intercepted, but, he showed a lot of character there, because there was a point on about the 4th series where he hit Theo Johnson, and had he not there, the passion would have continued to rise, even if James did not want to go to Aller. That was a real big time completion, because it was on 3rd down, and it got them moving. You know what, though? I think we're in it's a new normal. You have coaches making over $7 million a year, and he deserves it. I'm not one of those people that doesn't think the coach deserves whatever he's getting paid at that level. And you have a player who's been around 6 years, who has his own business, is helping other people with NIL, is making money, as he well should. But with all of those things, you're going to be treated kind of like a pro. Sure. And I agree with you, Neil. I don't like it. I don't like it, but I understand where people are getting frustrated. And I will also say this, that if people are going to be critical of those fans, we'll get into this with the defense, but that fan group, man, they helped turn that game around, forcing 5 false starts. Absolutely. So, well, I think it was, my point too is, it was to Clifford's credit that he was able to put all that, and how mentally tough he has been. Well, and he talked about it afterward too. Yeah, I mean, that was the good thing. It's like, hey, listen, I play for my teammates. We have passionate fans. I know they're into it. He said all the right things. Came out, met the media. So, if anybody was going to get booed and was going to be able to handle it, it's a 26-year-old who's played in all these games. And again, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying it's kind of the new normal.
With that professional style of things as well, when you have a quarterback like Drew Aller in the wings for him, what's that dynamic of, hey, if we put it in the NFL perspective, hey, there's the first round, the Steelers example, we have the first round draft pick in Kenny Pickett. How do we balance that dynamic? We've talked about it the last couple of weeks of when's it time for Aller?
It's a tough call. Everybody knows how talented the kid is. They want to see him out there playing. We want to see him get some reps and get some experience out there. We've argued that he should have played a couple series against Northwestern, but he's so talented that it's almost normal, like you said, for fans to want to see the new kid, to see him perform, to see that strong arm and how he can find receivers and on a dime, but it's just not his time yet, and his time will come. Other than Massimo, the backup quarterback is the most popular guy on campus.
Nice. I will say this, if they, and I mentioned this beforehand, if you're not going to go to him in the Minnesota game, you're not going to go to him until, unless the season completely unravels. But they've made their decision. And listen, it paid off, to the coaching staff's credit. It paid off in that Minnesota game. When everybody wanted them to pull Clifford early in the game after the pick, they stayed true to him. And to their credit, they made the right choice in that game.
And he gives them the best chance to compete with Ohio State.
He does.
I do.
That version does, yes, for sure.
Not Michigan, obviously.
Right, but your version of unraveling and mine might be different. If they lose this game and it's decisive, November, to me, all bets are off in terms of the usage.
They always say you can't teach experience, and we've harped on it all summer, forever, that Sean Clifford is 1 million years old. But what other...
He looks good for 1 million.
Yeah, definitely 1 million years old, since the dawn of time. What other running backs or tight ends or receivers stuck out to you guys?
Well, I mean, we talked about Theo Johnson. I mean, you looked at the tight ends had 6 targets in the previous 2 games, and I think they had 8 or 9 in this game.
They got him involved really
early.
Yeah,
Mike Yurcich was saying a bunch of it had to do with chip blocking and pass protection, that sort of stuff. The bottom line is, arguably your MVP, offensive MVP going into this game was Brenton Strange, and Theo Johnson was bumped up, but he was kind of like the lost man. And then Tyler Warren comes through with a catch for a touchdown. So I think they finally realized they have these weapons. You got to get the ball to them, and to their credit, they did a nice job with it.
Well, the receivers were excellent yesterday too. I mean, Parker Washington's catch in the end zone was one of the great ones that you'll ever see, because he's not 6'4", and he boxed that kid out in high point. That was really good. And
Shrewsbury might recruit him to go.
Tinsley had a great catch up the left sideline also.
Yeah, I mean, wide receivers and the running backs, it was just nice to also see the tight ends, because our group of tight ends are just as good as any of those other.
And that team, Minnesota, I think 6th nationally in average yards per game allowed. So that wasn't some, the Minnesota offense really struggled, but that had been a stout defense to that point. So to pull it all together, I think was a positive.
You mentioned the defense. We've been talking offense. After a quick break, we'll break down Manny's defense in the whiteout. Don't go anywhere.
The NitWits are being brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntingdon. And by McAlear's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Well, let's take a look around the Big Ten at some of the other scores. Ohio State rolls over Iowa. That's interesting heading into this week. Purdue falls at Wisconsin. Rutgers beats Indiana. And Northwestern falls at Maryland. We have the top 25. Ohio State's number 2. Michigan's number 4. Penn State jumps a couple spots up to 13. And Illinois at number 17. So we talked last block about mainly the offense. The defense looked really good in this one, holding them to just 17. We get the pick from Jair Brown. Give us a grade, if you will.
Well, it was an A. I mean, it was 2 out of 13 on 3rd down. And so Minnesota's offense couldn't stay on the field. And, they pretty much one-dimensional. Ibrahim's a good back, but Penn State, I think, really kind of forced the issue. Penn State did against Minnesota what I think people thought they could have done more against Michigan, forcing them to pass. Because, Michigan's quarterback is good and better than the guy Minnesota had yesterday, but
you're better than a guy Minnesota.
Well, I don't know.
I give him credit though as a true
maybe.
freshman for his first performance. I'll give him the whole game I was watching. All right, clearly this is not the best time to get your first start, but I give him a good job, kid. Great story to tell the grandkids one day. But
you know what I loved about the defense, Anderly, and we were out there at Michigan, and after that game. They got torched for over 400 rushing yards, and what did P.J. Mustard say? We were all there, and he said that was an embarrassment. They owned it, and again, not what I said it last week. That wasn't the media saying that. It's a big difference when you or I say it than when P.J. Mustard says it. And you know what? They went and took care of business and looked like they were a team that was embarrassed the previous week and came out and played like a completely different team. You had your team leaders in Mustapher, in Curtis Jacobs. I know Jair Brown did get rolled over once, but he had an interception. Your veteran players came in and played physical and hard and tough against one of the most physical, hard-nosed teams in the Big Ten. I thought it was a great sign.
And it was a great atmosphere too with the whiteout. Man, the defense really stepped up, and we talked about it before. They had 5 false starts, and you could just tell how energized the defense was early on.
And 2 offside. The crowd had a big factor. They also did some different things on defense. They started Abdul Carter, who looks like he's wearing number 11 for a reason. And had 8 tackles. And, I think, hey, they're going to need that this week because I don't think they can win a shootout with Ohio State.
Yeah, Curtis Jacobs, going back to him, they moved him back to that Sam linebacker position so you can get Carter on the field, and Jacobs comes through with a career-high 14 tackles. That's what I'm talking about. The linebackers played poorly against Michigan, and they owned it, and they came in and played really well in this game. So it was really that part of it, if you're a Penn State fan, that tells you that maybe that Michigan game was an aberration, and maybe this is more what they're all about. Now, we're going to find out pretty soon if that's the case, but that's the beauty of this. We've been calling it the gauntlet the whole time. We're going to know exactly what this team's all about.
Yeah, well, they had the defensive tackles. PJ was leading them in tackles in the last couple games. I don't mean for the season, but in this game, you saw the linebackers were up there at the top of the tackle chart.
And, of course, Penn State defense shutting down Kirk Shiraka. What does that mean if you're Mike Yurcich, the guy that you came in to replace, besides a little bit of pride? What does that mean for him, either from the fans or from James Franklin?
Well, I think that was an unfortunate situation with Shiraka, and he didn't have his quarterback. I think, it's one game. But again, I think Yurcich called a good game. I don't know if he's up there just trying to be compared to Shiraka. I think the bar ought to be, they were losing a lot of games with Shiraka too. So and it was.
But I would think the way the Penn State offense struggled, and all the people saying, "Oh, when they had Shiraka, how much better is this?" I think the fact that they came out and played that much better was just a good sign for Yurcich. And again, you know what? He met the media this past week. He didn't have to do that. I mean, that wasn't the easiest time for him to come out and have a conference call.
Right.
Diaz had it the week before Michigan. He was smart enough to have his the week before. But no, he came out, and the thing was, Yurcich was terrific in talking to us. So, good for him that there were a lot of eyes on both coordinators in that game, and he pushed the right buttons.
Hey, real quick, Massimo, what do you think of Barney? Mark talked about Strange being an MVP. Barney is too.
Yeah, I love it. I just the fact that this guy, everyone was talking about the kid from Georgia coming in, and he was going to be the next great punter. And Barney, got a scholarship, and he's from Doylestown, which is where I live now. And I haven't met him yet, but I look forward to meeting him. He's having a great year. He's so consistent. I love the way he drops the ball. He reminds me of a guy named John Bruno. You guys remember him?
There you go.
Absolutely.
And when you're scoring that many points as Penn State did, how, from a specialist standpoint, when you're repeatedly doing all those point afters, how does that affect the leg? Does that affect the hip more than
No, not at all. And thanks for asking that. I actually like the fact that it looks like James and the coaching staff have decided just to stick with Jake Pinniger for extra points, field goals, and kickoffs as well. I wasn't a big fan of the musical chairs with the kickoffs. I'm like, come on, what are you doing? The poor kid kicks one to the 5-yard line.
He's led that mission.
I mean, come on,
Coach. They had 3 kickoff guys in one game.
And they're all capable. They're all
that.
capable. Don't get me wrong. But now you can see that Jake is getting into the groove, right?
But then they still brought Wosu in, and he ends up kicking it to like the 8-yard line. And I just, isn't that
Well, they threw him a ball
overthinking?
late in the game.
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah, no, he had one that was, I think, in the 3rd quarter. But regardless, I mean,
it was a carousel for a while.
Yeah. I mean, Jake was putting them all in the end zone, as you saw.
Hey,
so.
Pinniger tied the game at 3 from 42.
Yeah,
And, at that point, it wasn't like you were blowing him out. So
he's showing some good consistency
Yeah,
too,
absolutely.
which he hasn't always shown. And for a senior, it's a good sign moving into the crunch part of this season.
So we talked about the fans briefly. We'll reflect more on the whiteout festivities after a quick break.
The NitWits are being brought to you by RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry. The answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage. No matter what type of weather, we're a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. And by Kogan Electric, lighting the way for you.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
We are talking Penn State's win over Minnesota 45-17. It says 16 on the screen there, but since the AP has come out, Penn State is now 13. So of course the whiteout, fantastic college environment. It's like no other, the greatest show. How loud was it yesterday, and where does it rank in terms of that volume level?
Well, I haven't been to a lot of other places where they've done that at that level.
Or this whiteout.
Right. Oh, this one? Yeah, I mean, it was. I was down there at the beginning of the game when the teams came out, and it was pretty loud. And then obviously during the game, I mean, they made their presence known by forcing 3 false starts. It was very cool to see Guido D'Elia up in the press box. He was the kind of mastermind behind this, 15 years ago, however many years ago it was. And I think he's doing a little bit of consulting, but to have him there just to say hello to and knowing what that brainstorm all those years ago has led to. And then the light show they did was pretty cool too. I thought that whole operation was really well done.
Yeah, I did a little story on Guido. He's from Altoona. He's talking about, he met with Pat Kraft. Pat Kraft reached out to him about maybe a little bit more spontaneity during the game, than maybe moving off the script. One thing I didn't like, and maybe Guido can help address this, or some of the powers that be, Pat Kraft, besides the heat in the press box, which didn't even be on. But
the food is okay.
You had the 2012 team there, and you had these guys bunched up I mean, you got to find a window to introduce these guys by name. I mean, you have some of the most important names in Penn State history that helped save that program. Maudie, Zordich, McGloin, Hill. Yeah. Hey, find a way to do this. I mean, in your team, they buzz read it, and I know you had a lot of, when, your team that they honored 40 years, for the 40 years ago, earlier this season. And you got one of the biggest ovations, which we were glad to see.
Massimo was only 8 years old on that team. He was incredible.
Yeah, but I just like, with the recognition, I mean, their history is so important. I just was a little disappointed with that.
Yeah, I agree. When I heard that they were being honored, I thought it was going to be a halftime thing like they did for us, but.
Yeah, well, if you're going to do that, you have to do it the right way.
If you're going to do it,
absolutely.
fully commit to it.
Absolutely.
Just like the student section did to just having a great time.
Yeah.
But Massimo, speak to that, though, because your team has come back and, just how to still be remembered. What kind of feeling is that?
It's awesome. Just what I liked was how they actually showed Joe Paterno, the greatest coach that we've ever witnessed, that I've ever had, for sure. They showed him on the scoreboard for more than just his shoes, and that was nice to see.
They've been doing that more in the pregame.
I agree, and that was really cool. And it was just great, as I was telling you earlier, just to be remembered 40 years later. It's a pretty special feeling. We had a great turnout. It's always great to see a lot of these guys.
Well, we were paying attention, and you got one of the biggest rounds of applause. It was tremendous. I think it was Shane Conlon and you, right? I mean, it was pretty impressive.
So.
Yeah.
Cons wants to be moved in the alphabet so he doesn't have to be drowned out by Shane Conlon's applause.
All right, well, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll talk Ohio State picks. Don't go anywhere.
The NitWits are being brought to you by Fullington Tours, offering round-trip transportation to and from Beaver Stadium from locations in State College and Altoona. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Look at Penn State's upcoming schedule. Of course, number 2 Ohio State comes to town this week, then Indiana, Maryland, and Rutgers to round out what we are calling the gauntlet of this one. But I am the Nitwit of the week for the 4th straight week. I'm quite proud of that performance there.
It's a resume item for you.
I know. But heading into the Ohio State week, of course, always a big game. I'm going to give you my pick first. I think Ohio State's going to win 35-21. This is one of the best teams in the country. This offense the last couple years for Ohio State has just been so prolific. I think Penn State comes close, but I don't think it's going to be a fall in their favor.
Okay, I'll go. This is the benchmark in the league.
Yep.
This is the elite program. I do think Penn State has character, and you've got a veteran quarterback for sure. And they've taken some momentum in. I'm going to say Ohio State 33, Penn State 20.
Wow. You talk about losing to a team like Michigan is one thing, but you've only beaten Ohio State now once in 9 years. If you want to be that contender, you have to start beating this team every once in a while and beating them at home.
What do we hear? What are you warming to?
You hear Ohio State 31, Penn State 20. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Ohio State has too many weapons. I think we saw in the Michigan game when you have a real accurate quarterback coupled with a strong running game, even though Ohio State didn't run it particularly well against Iowa, I just think they have too many weapons for Penn State to hold them in check, and I'm still not sold on the Penn State offense. Which version of Sean Clifford are we going to get?
I think that's the key to everything. It must be everything.
You know what I'm going to say, right?
Yes.
Well, this sets you up to be the Nitwit of the week.
That's right. Listen, number 2 against number 13, right?
It's going to be great.
Upsets happen every weekend with unranked teams that beat ranked teams. Playing at home, let's just go for it, man. I think that we're going to score a lot of points. So is Ohio State. 35-31 Penn State.
All right, well, that's a great one. Well,
How
on that
about
note, thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week right back here. Have a good one.
The NitWits have been brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntingdon. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we're a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Kogan Electric, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona In-State College, we proudly support Penn State football. By Fullington Tours, offering round-trip transportation to and from Beaver Stadium from locations in State College and Altoona. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.